we link everything to political mantra, and then people try to hide under these things to perpetuate mayhem and possibly cause loss of death, as has happened in this particular situation. I don't think we should gloss over it and say it is politics as usual. I will condemn it if it's my party, and I'll condemn it if it's otherwise, it's vice versa. You see, when you promise people that when you take over government, you are going to legalize and give them the opportunity to work in the mines, what and how do you mean? Is that you goad them on that they should vote for you? And you see, and then your government wins power and they are not seeing the jobs. What do you expect them to do? This is the situation you put them in.
These things happen as a result of, how our politics has been structured. Over the years, it's become a matter of your party is in power and it's your time to benefit. And it's not just at the grassroots. It goes all the way from the community level, district level, regional level to national level. And we were talking about even ministerial appointments and how, people at certain party offices ablaze because they are claiming the persons they support or their MPs have not been appointed and so on. So it's this whole sense of entitlement and the fact that during the campaign, we also, or the politicians or political leaders, end up also giving some assurances, sometimes very unrealistic from the legal and practical side of things. But because of, the crave for voting, certain promises are made. I think this has happened. As Otufo said, we are not in the banana republic. We are a country governed by laws, or at least a country that must be governed by laws, because sometimes, depending on who is at fault, the law may be working quite differently. But that leads me to this whole point about resetting Ghana that the president talks about. I honestly think that resetting Ghana really is not about just saying that we've reduced the number of ministers, we are urging ministers to be respectful, declare your assets, and all of that. I think to a large extent, it's about reorienting people in terms of mindset, in terms of values, and secondly, making sure that the laws work in a way that is fair, that is just, that is equitable, and therefore, it doesn't matter that it is an NDC president who is in power. If you're an NPP member and you do something that is against the law must work. That's the only way we are going to be able to reset the country, if indeed we will be able to reset the country.
The problem of Obuasi didn't start today, as one of your commenters mentioned. There's an interesting and fascinating article, actually, by one Godfred Apia Oko, which is on grievance and conflict in Obuasi, on Ghana's gold mining industry, the case of Obuasi. The catalogs from 1990 till now, the number of clashes that have happened between the mines and individuals and with the military involved and people dying. There's a bigger question around community participation rights within the governance of our natural resources that we can't at every time isolate these incidents when they happen and say, okay, the individuals armed themselves and went there and then some died, some people were shot, then we have misinformation on that. There's an original sin that we need to address regarding the community's feelings that they ought to have certain participation rights and resources that are mined in their backyard, and how we balance that as a democracy. The constitutional framework we have that vests everything in the state, and then we issue licenses in Accra without great consideration of the people there, and in terms of the administration of the resources, there's no clear pathway to how the communities are benefited. In fact, a lot of the times what we hear is that these companies must perform CSR. We cannot leave it to the private discretion of companies how we set people's entitlement rights or community rights within a natural resources governance system.
Well, I think that everybody, where you are within the jurisdiction or outside the jurisdiction, you have a platform to educate people. You have a duty to behave responsibly. That duty to manifest in the respect of others, the respect for the views of other people, and the fact that you are communicating to change perception, to change attitude. And so if you fail in that, then you are failing in your journalistic training. All of us have a responsibility to act reasonably and responsibly. And so, yes, any journalist who calls on people, and I say that you need to read Hotel Rwanda, understand how it started, to understand how a callous utterance from a journalist can burn a country.
We need to see what this presenter is doing within its context. He is only a puppet player. Those who are holding the strings controlling also need to be brought to order. As far as the Mass Media Commission is concerned, this was the high elite for the content standards in electronic communication. And we strongly believe that all of us need to raise. I heard you raise the question of jurisdiction, and I knew that you were seeking to educate the public. Let all those who sit outside and send in wrongful content understand that you do not avoid liability by standing at Aflao and throwing bomb into Togo and claiming that there are no jurisdictional matters in there. It is the same thing that applies to media content. Where you sit to do the act may not matter. The society that you impact may well be where you be held liable. I think we need to deal with three things and help them to understand that they will not avoid liability for long. The enforcement challenges are completely different from the questions of liability, and they need to learn them.
Says it all, many shall die because of the greed of some. That has become a reality today because of our inability to fight what threatens our very existence: illegal mining and the pollution of our environment. So last week we had a conversation about it, and just over the weekend Erastus Asaridonko shared with us again how our forest reserves are being destroyed. This morning, Erastus Asaridonko has joined us on the Super Morning Show. We also have Franklin Kujo, who is president of Imani Africa, both joining us on phone. We'll be joined shortly also by Professor Godfred Bokbing. Erastus, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And Franklin Kujo, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Erastus.
Good morning.
Great. So, Erastus, I mean, we started this conversation last week, but over the weekend, you've still been monitoring, as you always do, and you still have found mining in the Tano-Anwia forest. This time around, 3 groups, Erastus. Tell us more about that.
So, we always keep a keen eye on the ground. We have people who are monitoring the various reserves and other areas for us and the water bodies. They give us periodic updates with pictures. And so with Tano-Anwia, if you remember, the backstory is that elements in the previous administration, the MPP government, invaded that part of the forest.
Sure.
In fact, in the Awuwin municipality, an MPP executive sent Chinese miners there illegally, and they destroyed a large part of it. Now, when power changed hands, we realized that there are groups who are, and let me mention here, NDC groups, who claim their party has come to power, and so they are also taking over and they are mining. We've also heard of certain elements who are reaching out to the galamsey kingpins who were working and fronting for the previous administration, that they were going to work with them. Now, subsequently, we've seen them pitch camp in the forest and have done a lot of damage to the forest already, and they are still doing it. In fact, when I investigated, I found out that every person I spoke with was mentioning the name of the MP for Awuwin. And so I reached out to him and asked him about it. But he has denied involvement. He rather admits that, yes, he has advocated that if they are giving people the chance to mine, then they should also give these boys, who he describes as party boys, to us a chance to also mine. And I've been asking him whether that does not amount to endorsing an illegality, because these groups do not have any licenses and cannot follow the roadmap as enshrined in our laws concerning how to mine in a forest reserve. In fact, since then, one group led by one Karim, a known NDC activist, has pitched camp in one section of the forest. There is another one called Baron, who has also pitched camp in another side of the forest. There is one they call Mahama Bodyguard, who is also equally, his real name is Eugene, also pitching camp with his groups, to the extent that they've been fighting with guns, and 2 people have already died from their own lot, and the destruction still goes on. To me, that is what is worrying, especially coming out of a regime that paid no heed to the destruction that has gone on in our forest.
Now, you say that anybody you spoke to, all the persons you spoke to, pointed fingers at the Member of Parliament. What specifically did the Member of Parliament for this area And if you're talking about the Awin constituency, it means you're talking about the Honorable Oscar Ofori-Labi, right?
Yes.
What did he say to you when you spoke to him?
Well, so specifically, he told me that he is not involved in any way. And I asked him the questions. First, I wanted to find out whether he has no interest at all in mining in the area. He said no. And whether he has not spoken with even the concessionaire on granting him a part of the area to mine. That information I got from the ground. He said no. He has never called that concessionaire. There are key people within the party I spoke with who were all confirming that those boys are his boys. So when
you say key people within the party, which party, Rastas?
I'm referring to the NDC party in our wing.
Okay.
And he said that he knows them, those who are mining there, he knows them to be party boys. And that at one point in time, he had advocated that if they were giving chance to other people to mine in the forest, then they should equally give those boys a chance to mine. And that's why I asked him whether that is not condoning an illegality and supporting an illegality. And he said, well, he just advocated and he has no interest or involved in any way. But, Winston, my point is that, you see, mining in the forest reserve, it's a very restricted business. The Forestry Commission guards the various forests with their lives. In fact, there are forest guards who will be able to even fish out somebody who is cutting a tree, just a single tree in the forest, and they will be able to fish you out. Not alone carting excavators, over 17 of them, into that forest. If you do not have any strong political backing or strong force behind you, you will never be able to achieve that. And that is what has happened in the previous era, where people who were powerful in government supported certain key individuals within the party to take excavators into the forest to destroy it. And that is my premise, that we should not be condoning that kind of impunity. In fact, as we speak, the Apamprama Forest Reserve has lost about 50% of it. They are now pits and gullies. We are now looking for money to reclaim, and we are talking about millions of dollars. Already, the $103 million that came from the World Bank for that restoration project, I have checked on the ground. I have not seen it. I'm challenging the previous administration. If they used it for restoration, they should come up and show us where they did that reclamation with the money so we can go and check. But we are creating more conditions for more loss to the taxpayer. Because as we keep on invading these forests and digging haphazardly and mining illegally, we are creating more key areas for reclamation, which is very expensive. And already we are not even getting any tax from these illegalities that we are perpetrating. So I really think that this calls for an emergent situation.
Your call has been put on hold. Please
and
wait.
already I am happy that
Your
after
call has been
I
put on
posted
hold.
it on my
Please
Facebook
wait.
page and did the story on Joy, I'm having key people in government at the seat of government calling. And in fact, they are giving me a roadmap that is starting today that they are going to go on the ground. I am happy, and I'm still
that
monitoring
roadmap
to
that
see
you
what will
talk
happen.
about, Erastus, that roadmap that you talk about, finally, what is it?
Well, they are telling me that starting from today, they are going to move on the ground and they are going to flush those people out. They also say they are not going to do things like the previous administration and that they are going to work with us. I'm looking forward to it. It's a good start because in the previous administration, even when we sent our works to the various ministers in their WhatsApp portfolios, they never responded. They never reached out to even say, we're going to work with you, or we are acting on this, or we are acting on that. So that's a bold step. It's a good step.
Okay.
But I'm baiting my breath to see what will happen at the end of today and in the course of the coming days concerning our polluted rivers and the invasion of our forest reserves.
Now, finally, so you say following the change of government, some of these boys have also moved into the forest, believing now that they can also degrade the forest, damage the forest in search of gold.
Exactly, and it's not limited to one forest. In fact, after airing that story, I'm hearing a lot of reports with pictures from the Takwa area, from the Dumping area, parts of the western region, even the Tano-Anwia Forest Reserve, where Chemawuntumi invaded illegally. They have also invaded that place as well. They've gone to the Yoyo Forest Reserve, also within the Samreboy enclave, and they've invaded those parts as well.
Okay.
And that is where I think a strong statement from the current administration to show that they will not condone that impunity will revert across the entire galamsey field and send a strong message out there to people that this is not the way to go.
All right, Erastus Asare-Donkor, thank you very much for joining us. We know that you would, keep following up on this. We'll definitely come back to you. We are also going to be following up on this. We are not going to let people continue the destruction of our environment. But let me bring in Franklin Kujo, president of Imani Africa. And the surprise, Franklin, is the fact that we've also been joined by Professor Godfred Bokping. Good morning, Professor Bokping.
Yes, good morning, Winston, and good morning, Franklin Kujo, and everyone.
Great.
Good morning.
Franklin, the surprise is that even the destruction of our environment, people see it as, their bona fide right once there is a change in government. How did we sink this low, Franklin?
Well, good morning once again. Who was it that said? My good friend, the late Professor Joyaipe. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Professor Joyaipe, in one of his famous, quotes, and permit me if I should quote. It's sure. A bit, it's funny, but he says that. He was talking about African governments and the challenges they have. He had a time with most governments in the 90s and all of that. And then he said something like, we struggle hard to remove one cockroach from power, and another rat comes to repeat the same thing. It's really funny. But I'm not saying, I'm using this example not necessarily to say that the NDC government has unleashed on us what I call environmental homicide elements. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But you see, the optics may not be looking good at this point. If indeed these persons, as Erastus has identified, and by the way, some of them are waiting in the saddle. They are waiting in the sidelines to see exactly how these persons will be treated, and then boom, the whole thing starts again. So I'm not. It is important that we rein this thing into, and I expected that one of the things the president would have done immediately, one of his critical mission issues, should have been this galamsation. I don't know whether it's part of the 120-day, or should I propose ultimatum. Yeah, but I suspect that immediately whoever becomes the lands minister or the so-called ministerial committee that's usually set up should move into it, because these are legacy issues. See, these are one of the biggest legacy issues that led to the last administration's after from power. And so it's one critical issue that the new administration must seize immediately to deal with. Erastus, I'm going to ask you how the water bodies looking like. Let's be an indication as to whether the intensity of these activities have been brightened or been looked. I don't know yet, but whatever it is, because it's like a sleeping dragon or snake actually waiting to exhale, I think it's important that the new administration tells us exactly how they are going to deal with this matter immediately. They shouldn't be telling us. They should just move into action and deal with the matter expeditiously. I'm surprised and I'm worried that there are stories of this nature.
Let me bring you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, you were asking for the 120-day social contract, but you look at the 120-day social contract. 19 says ban illegal and new mining activities in forest reserves, roll out our Trees for Life and Blue Water initiative to heal and sustainably harness the environment by turning areas and water bodies degraded by illegal mining into economic and ecological recovery hubs. So that's what he says. Hello, Franklin. Okay, I think we may have lost Franklin Kujo, who's president of Imani Africa. But if you have Professor Godfred Bokping on, Professor Bokping, briefly also on this illegal mining, what's your take?
Well, thank you very much. I think we were not expecting much from President Mahama and from the NDC in terms of their resolve to fight illegal mining. But I would prefer that we even say irresponsible mining, because some miners have license, but they are doing irresponsible mining across the continuum. Because if you properly diagnose the issue, you realize that the illegal mining, irresponsible mining cuts across the two main political parties, right? So I think what is needed right now will be the various stakeholders, the people of Ghana. We coming to terms that we face existential threats. How do we turn this existential threat to existential opportunity? We cannot leave that alone to government to settle that on their own terms. If we leave that alone to the president and the government to settle on their own terms, I'm sure in the next couple of years, Ghana will be gone. So it's just like a tortoise. Sometimes,
yeah, but Prof, talking about leaving government, Prof, I mean, there were people who actually campaigned against the previous government, wanted the previous government out because they said the previous government had done nothing. And you had some of their communicators say they only would fight illegal mining post the election because they didn't want a situation where it would affect them. Now, if we say you didn't expect much from the NDC because they are both involved, then it means we're lost, aren't we? Because the government that must lead the way doesn't seem to care or can't do anything about it.
In economics, we say that people respond to incentives, even include leadership. So you realize that the results, or even that occasion, the regime change, it actually came from the people. It came from the middle class, TUC, UTAC, and all the medical association, and all of that. So that's why I'm saying that we need to get all these stakeholders on board. We need to get the security agencies. That way, we'll be able to get government to respond in a manner that preserves our ecological ecosystem. If we leave it to only the president or government to settle this matter, I think it will take a little longer, and by the time we realize it's a different thing altogether. And that's why I'm saying that, look, we cannot leave it to government alone. I think we need to go back to the basics. We need to resurrect the pressure across the various stakeholders, interested parties, so that that way government will respond. Remember that politicians are afraid of the crowd. So if we are silent, then understanding is that it's okay and all of that. And I think that the more we allow time, the more politicians will take us for a ride. And that is why I'm saying that we cannot leave it to the president alone. Because, in fact, if we had a serious government, I mean, like Donald Trump, you could just see he meant what he was saying. And within the first few days, you could see what he has done in terms of executive orders, in terms of a state of emergency and all of that. That is leadership. We don't have that here. So we have to step in. And I think that this is the time. We cannot allow honeymoon for the president in a matter that is as critical as irresponsible mining, that threatens the legitimacy of the state itself and all of that. So this is not just something that affects a few people. In fact, this is an existential threat. This undermines our democracy. We have no idea that our moral fiber is being lost to the highest bidder. Our democracy is for sale and all of that. So I think that, for our own going concern, for our own future, I think we all need to come on board. I think that is what is needed right now. I don't think that if we allow the president alone on this matter, we will get results. There has to be a measured pressure on the president. We have to bury our political differences, our tribal differences, and recognize that this is the time that we must win another independence for the next generation. Just as our forefathers laid down their lives and won independence for us, this is another independence we have to win. Because whether we like it or not, look, even if we say we should stop irresponsible mining today, the level of destruction that we have witnessed, our fiscal space cannot sustain that. We cannot. And if you look at the projections, in the next 5 to 10 years, in fact, we are looking at maximum the next 10 years, Ghana will have to start importing water. Okay. And if you look at the medical professionals have told us the health implications and all of that. In fact, we don't need a prophet to even tell us what the future looks like. The data is clear. The data is clear. And the solution will not be that, hey, those who can get out of the kitchen because the kitchen is so hot and all of that. I think we have just one country and we have only Ghana. And all that we need to do right now is to make sure, in fact, and I think that the president is operating behind the curve. By now, the president should give us a clear roadmap. We cannot leave it to only the Minister of Lands and whatever natural resources. This must come from the highest office of the land. The president should give us a roadmap. In the next 6 months, in the next 3 months or so, what is the roadmap?
Okay.
What role is expected of all of us?
Let me just bring back Franklin in, because Franklin, before we lost you, you were asking the 120-day contract, and I said I wanted to share with you what President Mahama promises. He says, ban illegal and new mining activities in forest reserves, roll out our Tree for Life and Blue Water initiative to heal and sustainably harness the environment by turning areas and water bodies degraded by illegal mining into economic and ecological recovery hubs. That's the promise, Franklin.
Well, thank you. And it's exactly what ought to be done. I suspect it should have been probably the first 30 days, because it's an existential threat.
Okay.
I know that the Minister for Lands and is in Natural Resources for Forestry is yet to be vetted and all of that. But you see, I somehow feel that, look, the president, this is one of the first orders that he gave, even before the minister is in place. Immediately, I thought the first few actions would have been staying course of almost all the water bodies, the places where mining is happening illegally. At least issue an executive order, as Trump has been doing, and then just so that you put people on notice. You understand? Anyway, he said 120 days, so let's not possibly rush him. But I would have thought that it's one of the very few actions that should have been taken. At least sending that signal. Don't forget, we called on Nanado to at least issue an emergency. Where these things were happening. Where these things were happening. Rather, he sent a legion of about 100 soldiers who dissipated into thin air because they didn't know what they were about. So it is important that we deal with this matter expeditiously. I don't want to hear the narratives about, and some ministers in the last administration told me, had it not been this small illegal thing, the city would have been 25 cities to $1 by now. I said, I don't care. If we're sacrificing that was a warped way of fighting currency, fighting currency stability, by the way. If you thought that we would use illegal means to actually stable a currency, very soon, your whole economy will be taken up by illegal people, by the way. So, look, this is an existential issue, and I think it should be dealt, especially now that we had this unfortunate incident in what's it called?
Obuasi?
But actually, yes, now that reminds me, that should have been an opportunity for President Mahama to actually put this in motion immediately. Issue an executive order that, look, all illegal mining, everything will be stopped, and then we wait to see how it is enforced. Okay. I think it should come sooner than later. Than the 119th day or 180th or 120th day. It should be one of the things that should come at least within the next week. We should hear something authoritatively. I know he set up a committee to look into Obuasi, but I think probably an opportunity should have been taken to quickly rein in these activities as they happen in our water bodies and forest areas.
Great. Let me introduce Senyo Hosi, who is founding member of the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey. He's also joined the conversation. Senyo, Franklin says this should have been one of the first things that this government should have done. You agree?
I agree with Franklin, absolutely. I have been impressed with a number of the things that His Excellency President Obama has done. If my disappointment exists today, it's only about galamsey. I am not impressed. I'm not enthused. His Excellency the President actually signed the pledge. One of the things that the pledge talks about is denouncing galamsey and actually taking swift action and admitting that the responsibility is that of His Excellency the President. So for us to be here and see things degrade and actually start getting information that some people now think is their turn to chop, it's very heartbreaking. And I think the President has a very short window to maintain the confidence of the public. I have maintained that Ghanaians rejected another Akufo-Addo regime in that last election. Unnecessarily because of superiority about any policy positioning from anybody else, but it was a clear rejection of the Akufo-Addo's management of our economy and critical issues like galamsey. We have reposed a lot of confidence in His Excellency John Mahama. He shouldn't lose it that quickly. And I just pray that he is guided by good counsel around him and he takes remedial steps to restore confidence, especially confidence between the middle class. Go to those areas and people make a mistake assuming that the galamsey hills there because there's supposedly some money coming in there. People's farms are getting destroyed. It employs more people there. People are struggling to feed. Prof. Boppin and his team did some research sometime last year. The economic impact of galamsey in these areas has not gotten better. It is some people, very myopic thinking, who even think that now that they don't have to drink from the river, their river is not good enough and they're getting bottled water from Accra. They think they've advanced. It is stupidity. We can't continue to encourage this kind of recklessness in our country. We have only one country. Politicians will always come and go. What this also tells all of us is that the Ghana we want and the Ghana we need will not be given to us because we vote.
Yeah.
You have to fight and negotiate the Ghana you want, not just for yourself, but for yourself and your children, your children's children. That future, as we see, continue to look bleak. And if we leave it in the hands of politicians who will struggle with decisiveness, knowing the facts and the truth, it will be a problem. When we're fighting this galamsey after the election, I expected very swift action. I'm one of the very first statements. I was very impressed by Mahama's GM's 120-day promise. We clearly had number 19 there with galamsey. I was thinking it should have been number 1 or number 2. But it's okay. I don't care about the order. Where is the action? Where is that bold statement? We issued a statement the last time. We've already reached His Excellency the President for some action. Even issue a clear statement that, look, everybody exists, even this. We are going to move people in there. We have to restore our water bodies. For those who are going to economically impacted, we'll go through a process to review to see how we can manage the interests of everybody at some point. But what is superior at this time is our environment and our water bodies. Everybody must stop. Nothing. I haven't heard anything. I don't really listen to radio much, so I want to assume that maybe it's been said. I haven't heard it. So, Winston, you should tell me. Has it been said?
It hasn't.
Have you heard it?
No, it hasn't. I haven't heard
so,
it.
These are the things that break hearts and make people lose confidence very quickly. Most of us lost confidence in Anado's government in 6 months. It took him and his moving peanut to let us know that this man was not really up to the good that we wished. I don't want us to take less than 1 month for us to lose confidence in President Mahama. Where Ghana is today, what is on the table is democracy itself. People are losing confidence in democracy. So if we've all gone out there to really vote for you, Mr. President, with great expectations for a transformation, and in your own words, Mr. President, resetting of Ghana, and we still see nobody being pressed by critical Mr. President, it is very depressing. And you are running out of time to restore our confidence or to maintain the confidence and the trust and hope that many have in you.
Okay.
The voting pattern in Accra should tell you where the middle class stands today. The voting pattern in Accra alone should tell you where the middle class stands today. The fact that the president that has just left promoted galamsey by not taking decisive actions, and he also lost those places, should also tell you that trying to pamper the situation will not necessarily keep anybody's special vote in these areas. Let's get this straight. We are here for Ghana, and if a one-term president cannot be firm and strong enough to take decisive decisions to correct and restore hope for our future, in all honesty, Ghana is doomed. Ghana will be then doomed.
Hold on 1 minute.
That will be the legacy of JM.
Okay.
So I'm appealing to Mr. President for strong action and carry us, the people, along.
Okay.
And I agree again with Franklin. It is not a matter of Amakofibo, my very good friend. He's a great chap. But all the presidents who signed the pledge admitted it was the responsibility of the president, not of a minister they were appointed. So action must be taken, and action must be taken now. Okay. Having said that, a few things to the Ghanaian people. As I earlier said, we will get the Ghana we want and the Ghana we need if we negotiate and fight for it. So going forward, nobody should be passive. Because what is at stake is for your future and your children's future. When we have to take action, if we have to do with mass mobilization, going out carrying stickers, putting notes on your email signature, stop galamsey, join and add your voice. Let the political class know it's a matter of priority for you. There's nothing to be scared. What you should be scared is that you sit aloof and your children have no future.
Okay.
And everybody must rise to it. So thank you, Jonathan, for making this topic our matter. We always show the way.
Thank you very much, Senyo. So having discussed galamsey, and like you say, this is something we're going to continue. We must actually ensure that we're able to deal with this menace once and for all. But let's look at another thing, because one of the promises of His Excellency John Mahama also was the establishment was to have a national economic dialogue, and the team has been put in place with the objectives clearly stated. Let me start off with you, Franklin Kujo. What do you make of the team and the objectives set out for them?
Well, maybe this is Senchi version 2.0. I recall that the last time John was in office, he held this interesting dialogue. And of course, at the time, the opposition obviously did not participate. I think it was only the likes of Kwame Pieni who was part of actually took part in it. And by the way, that thing did Ghana a lot of good, because you see, that's where the homegrown solutions were best. Characterize it how you want. For me, I thought it was just common sense, but they call it homegrown solutions. I mean, if you don't have money, you don't need money to spend. You probably need to be, prudent. So whatever they characterize it, it actually fed into the ECF program at the time, which eventually led to the IMF deal that we had. So I think it is sensible that a national dialogue be held. Don't forget, it's one of the things the last administration never was interested in. I mean, I thought that I don't know whether they thought that by holding a national dialogue and people bringing views, then their equals would have been happy. I mean, astonishing levels of incompetence and weakness could have been made up for having a national conversation. And then the president could have deflected and said, well, these are the things people told me. But he didn't even want to listen to critics that, hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I think the line...
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, sure. So I think it was important. It's critical to have a conversation at some point in your lifetime, of the lifetime of an economy. Look at the DDEP. Look at how bad it was handled. You know, everything that happened, the economy, nothing national was ever held. I was shocked. So now that, John wants to do this, I think it is important. The only issue though is that They say one of the things is to show the true state of the economy. I think most Ghanaians already know what the true state of the economy is. I don't see why that objective should be really important, because part of the matter, that's why we kicked out those guys, by the way, the bad guys. Part of the matter is that they run this economy aground. They claim to use 120-something ministers. And so everybody knows the state of the economy, including the MPP. They are aware of the state of the economy. So I didn't think it was the first to establish the true state. That's the work of the Ministry of Finance. And I suspect that Masato is there, Honorable Forcing, he will be even through the transition period. There were numbers that were mentioned. All you need to do is to look at the numbers, look at the outcome. You have your true state of the economy. I don't know, this economy is not, it's not even so linked in such a way that, so that you can tell things will be affected here. This economy.
Franklin, can you hold on for me while we try to? Hello, Franklin. Franklin, can you hold on for me while we try to reconnect with you? We seem to be having some issues with your line, so please hold on for me, Franklin. We'll reconnect with you. But let me move on to Professor Godfrey Bokping now. Professor Bokping, so let me ask you about the objectives. Franklin has talked about the true state of the economy. That's something we know already. How about the remaining two? Develop a homegrown fiscal consolidation program and highlight key structural reforms and policy priorities essential for resetting the economy.
Well, thank you very much. I think that, because of how polarized the nation has become, even when it comes to our public debt, sometimes it's a matter of multiple choice. You have one figure here, another figure here, and all of that. I want to believe that part of establishing the true state of the economy is to have some kind of an objective approach, bringing on board different views and all of that, so that Ghanaians will begin to get along with what the state of the economy is, because depending on the party you belong to, sometimes you look at things differently, and the figures are also interpreted differently and all of that. So I would think that the first objective is still relevant, that we have a proper appreciation of where we are, which will guide us in terms of what kind of policies we need to come out with, what kind of reforms, how do we anchor those policies within the necessary structural reforms, productivity enhancing reforms. So I think that the first one is as important as the other two that follows from that. But I think that we also need to understand that we're under an IMF-supported program and all of that. So we have to be able to negotiate or navigate these homegrown solutions within the framework of the IMF-supported program. But what could also be good is that we know that the IMF-supported program alone will not be sufficient to deliver the economic transformation and productivity, inclusive productivity growth Ghana so desperately needs. So this forum probably will come out with other measures, reforms. For instance, when it comes to productivity enhancing reforms, we know that the IMF has a limitation in terms of the extent to which they can influence governance reforms. That is to the people of Ghana to prescribe. So when it comes to downsizing state-owned enterprises, even central government and the rest of them, the IMF wouldn't want to be strong in those areas. That would amount to interference. But we then can take advantage of this forum and prescribe cost-cutting measures, wasteful expenditure cuts that we think that will create fiscal space for productivity enhancing innovation and all of that. That is the only way we can complement the limited progress that we are getting from the IMF supported program. Remember, at the time the program was approved, the IMF managing director told us that we should look beyond the IMF supported program, that the program alone cannot deliver all that Ghana is looking for. We must be able to come out with our own measures to complement, right, some of the interventions that are within the IMF supported program. So I think that it's a good call, and I'm also happy some of the people who are on the committee, Dr. Ishmael Yamson, Dr. K.Y. Amuakun, because Dr. K.Y. Amuakun's organization has been talking about some of these reforms, the Ghana Compact and all of that. I believe that rich experience that he has across the globe, across the continent, will be brought to bear. But what is then important is that the committee must reach out to experts beyond the NDC or beyond the government, across academia, CSOs, and even practitioners. That way, we'll be able to build consensus, a good understanding of where we are and where we want to go and how we can get there. That would also identify the sacrifices that we need to make in terms of reforms to our tax regime. And then again, that would also come with the necessary sacrifice that leadership has to make. I believe that if we are talking about maybe 40 ministers, if we are talking about presidential advisors and all of that, I think we should look at the entire value chain and link that to state-owned enterprises. Because the concept of efficiency is not just with respect to central government, but then it must be a general government approach to doing business. How do we deliver public services at the least cost to the taxpayer? And what level of value for money should we look for in what project and all of that? Remember that infrastructure should not stand alone. You benefit from infrastructure when you explore efficiency and the leakages within the economy. I think so. I'm looking forward to the forum. I'm looking forward to the invited experts and all of that, and then the extent to which we'll be able to also implement. Remember that since independence, we haven't lacked strategy. Ghana's development, you'll find it in various economic strategy programs and all of that sit in the literature, that are gathering dust in the chest. Okay, you don't see it out there. The next important thing is whatever this committee will come out with, it must be binding. How do we make it binding? How does government accept some of those difficult proposals that will cost them their popularity, or that will require that they do greater trade-off for the common good? So that is how I will look at it. But of course, let's not take it that this is an achievement. Setting up a committee to organize a national economic forum is not an achievement. These are good intentions. We should not substitute them for accomplishment. But the president, more importantly, must look at how some of these interventions link up to the critical issues on the table of the average Ghanaian: irresponsible mining, food inflation, and all of that. So don't pick and choose. Look at it holistically. Look at how they are linked. You can never reset this economy in the face of ecological destruction. The first thing you should do is to preserve our ecology. There can never be any economy without the environment. And that is why at the national level today, when we are talking about development, we are saying that development must reflect the 5 P's. It must preserve our planet Earth. It must be people-focused. It must reflect peace, partnership, prosperity. Look, Winston, we are not asking our president to compete in the space economy. That is worth over $1.8 trillion. That is for U.S. and China and India. That is not what we are asking the president to do. We are asking the president to just preserve our environment here.
Okay.
That is all that we are asking. We are not asking him. We are not like asking fish to climb a tree. These are low-hanging fruit. A state of emergency, deployment, and all of that. I think we need that as quickly as possible. 120 day doesn't mean that it should start at the 120th day. It can start just tomorrow.
Thank you,
Prof. That is leadership.
Great. Kindly hold on for me, Prof. Let me bring in Senor Hosea at this point. Senor, what are your own thoughts about the National Economic Dialogue Committee that has been put in place and the objectives set out for them?
I agree with Prof about the fact that we need to definitely have something like this. It tells you something. I mean, I like the consultative posture of John Mahama. He's starting right. His biggest problem and biggest gap right now is galamsey. But setting up something like this is prudent. It's not the first time. When we had the Sinti retreat, which I was a part of, together with Franklin and Kwesi Boche of blessed memory, it was important trying to galvanize consensus across a future for our country. It set the pace for our economic recovery. It did. Make no mistake, everything you saw in year 1, 2017 and year 2, was a function of that base of 2017 and 2018 of Nana Addo's government. Was a function of that particular base, which they refused to partake in. The president coming here and admitting that, look, we have a big problem We can't just sit at the very top end of policy and look at things at just the macro level and disconnect with the micro that feeds the macro. So he's right. I really commend him for that step. It's a very good concern. And the team there, the only person I think should have been there is Prof. Bokpin. But Bokpin has done so much work, and I think his insights would be very critical. I wish he was a part of the organizing team so that the conversations are properly shaped. I mean, and Franklin's input in the last one was fantastic. I hope he'll be part of it going forward. So I commend the president for the initiative. But again, we shouldn't actually swap initiatives for achievements, like Prof said.
Okay.
There's one thing commissioning something for breaking ground for something. It's another thing commissioning it after completion. So the sweetness of the pudding will only be in the eating. Okay. But the steps we are seeing so far are positive. And frankly, I understand you that we all get the state of the economy. But you have a state of the economy in different facets. You have to connect and relate the macro state of the economy with the micro state of the economy. And that's why people must come together so that we set a baseline. So any kind of policy propositions that are made, there'll be a baseline to compare it to. Okay. There are many indicators that are not easily captured. There are certain real sentiments from the business world that are not properly captured. So yes, it may be there in snippets all over, but let's consolidate them and have a consolidated state of the broader economy, both at the micro and also at the macro level. And I think the inputs you made the last time, the leadership you show will be very critical in us having this very impactful. And I'm happy about KY Moakon. KY is a colossus in this conversation. It was one, he actually set the tone at the last Saint retreat when we had His Excellency Mr. Atta Blessed Memi leading the entire charge at the time. It was KY. And KY has been working on a national compact, significantly driven by economic interventions. And it's a compact that's been worked on by people from different fields. Frankly, is there. You have the likes of Prof, and a lot of great academics, a lot of great businessmen also participating in that process, and a few politicians who have also opted to also participate in that process. So his insights will be very, very impactful. I want to believe. So the team as gathered, I think, is fine. The initiative is fine. The terms of reference can always be amended or improved, but as is not out of place. We just can only encourage the team to actually deliver. There's something I'm seeing in my conversations with ministers these days. Everybody has conversations and takes time. And I like the fact that the president stated it explicitly. Is it 2 weeks or so? He said, within 2 weeks, this should be done. That's the kind of voice and leadership we want to see. But Mr. President, while you are doing this, you should do it on something that is equally or even more urgent today, which is galamsey. I beg you, don't look the other way when it is galamsey.
Sanyo, thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you also, Professor Godfred Bokpin, and thank you, Franklin Cudjoe, for all making time to join us here on the Super Morning Show.